Last year, I gave you a list of 3 fundamental books to begin your journey in philosophy. I talked about Plato, Descartes, and Heidegger, who I believe are the pillars of Western thought. And your response was incredible. You gave me a long list of great alternatives like Aristotle, Seneca, Spinoza, Hume, Kant, Hegel, and I agree with you. They are all great authors to start with. Except for Hegel, because let's be honest, either you pretend to understand Hegel or you are on your 4th PhD. Anyway, this year I decided to do something different. I picked 3 texts that, unless you are a rock, I assure you will touch your soul and make you want to write your own essay about life. These texts deal with 3 fundamental problems: looking into ourselves, looking towards others, and looking into the abyss. So, without wasting any more time, let's dive into these 3 texts. The first book on our list is a masterpiece that feels both ancient and shockingly modern: The Confessions by Augustine. Now, I know what you're thinking. Confessions? Is this some kind of medieval gossip? Kind of. But instead of confessing to stealing someone's boyfriend or girlfriend, Augustine confesses to stealing pears. Yes, pears. And he turns it into one of the deepest moral reflections of Western history. That's Augustine. He takes the smallest, most embarrassing details of his lives and uses them to ask the biggest questions. So, why is Confessions the perfect starting point for philosophy? Because it's the first time in Western literature that a human being turns inward so radically that the inside becomes bigger than the outside. Before Augustine, philosophy was mostly about the cosmos, virtue, politics, the external world. With Augustine, the universe shrinks into the interior of one person. He looks at his memories, his desires, his mistakes, his thirst for meaning, and he says, let's start here, inside. This is where truth begins. And the crazy part, he does all this with an honesty that is almost uncomfortable. He tells you about his ambition, his lust, his pride, his spiritual confusion, his bad decisions, all of it. It's a bit like listening to someone who's finally had enough of pretending and starts telling you the truth at 3 a.m. Augustine invents the philosophical autobiography, but he also invents something else: the idea that the self is a problem to be understood. Through his story, he becomes every one of us, because Augustine isn't just narrating his life, he's putting into words the experience of being human. Why am I restless? Why do I desire things that don't satisfy me? Why do I hurt people I love? Why can't I understand myself? And why does searching for meaning feel like walking through a labyrinth with a blindfold? I know that Augustine is a saint, but Confessions is not a theological textbook. Of course, it's also about God, but most importantly, it's a book about longing, that feeling that something is missing, that we are incomplete, that we are searching for home we've never seen but somehow remember. Augustine gives us one of the most powerful lines ever written. He says, "Our heart is restless until it rests in you." Even if you're not religious, that sentence hits you hard, because we are all incomplete, and we all have that feeling that we are running after something but we don't know what. What makes Confessions so revolutionary is that Augustine treats the interior life, memory, desire, guilt, identity as a philosophical terrain. He shows us that looking inward is not necessary narcissism, it's actually the beginning of wisdom. Before you build theories about the world, start with the storm inside you. And this is why I picked Confessions as the first book on our list. Because it teaches you the most difficult philosophical skill, which is not about logic or argument, but self-honesty. Read Augustine and you won't just learn philosophy, you will actually feel it. You will recognize yourself in a man who lived 1600 years ago and still somehow understands your existential crisis better than your group chat or your psychologist. So if Augustine teaches you to look inward, Fichte teaches you to look outward, straight at other human beings, and at the terrifying responsibility you have toward them. Now, I know Fichte isn't exactly a household name. Nobody says, oh yes, I'm just reading some light Fichte on the beach. But trust me, this little text, the vocation of the scholar, is like a philosophical slap in your face, in the best possible way. Here's a little bit of context of this text. In the year 1794, Fichte was invited to give a series of lectures to some university students. But instead of doing what professors usually do, talking for 2 hours until everyone forgets why they came, Fichte decides to ignite an intellectual revolution. His message is simple but explosive. To study is not a private privilege, it's a public duty. A scholar is not someone who accumulates knowledge like a dragon hoarding gold. A scholar is someone who uses knowledge to elevate humanity. For Fichte, the scholar is some kind of bridge between ignorance and enlightenment, between chaos and reason, between what we are and what we could become. And if that sounds dramatic, well, it is. Fichte basically looks at the room full of young students and says, congratulations, you are now responsible for the destiny of the human species. No pressure. But what makes this text so beautiful? It takes education, something we often reduce to grades, diplomas, etc., and turns it into a moral vocation, a calling, almost a sacred task. For Fichte, every act of learning is secretly an act of freedom. Because the more you understand, the more you can act consciously. You can shape your world instead of being shaped by it. And once you gain that freedom, you have the duty to pass it on. Knowledge isn't meant to stay in your head. It's meant to flow through you into the world. Fichte teaches you that yourself is simply not enough. You exist in a network of others, and your responsibility is to help them rise with you. And he goes even deeper. For Fichte, humanity is not a finished project, it's a work in progress, and scholars are the ones who push it forward, not with force, not with power, but with clarity. It's almost utopian, but also incredibly inspiring. Philosophy becomes a tool to improve the human race, not abstractly but practically, one mind at a time. And this is why reading Fichte today feels almost revolutionary. In an age where knowledge is treated like a content, productivity hacks, and career capital, he reminds you that true purpose of learning is to make the world more free, more rational, more human. So, if Augustine teaches you to explore the depth of your soul, Fichte teaches you to step out of yourself and take responsibility for the world around you. Because being a philosopher doesn't mean thinking alone, it means thinking for the sake of others. So far, we looked inward with Augustine and outward with Fichte. But now, it's time to do something much scarier. It's time to look into the abyss. And there's no better companion for that journey than Friedrich Nietzsche and his wild, explosive, joyful, terrifying book, The Gay Science. Now, Nietzsche is known for being striking. I mean, this is the guy who writes on his own autobiography, I'm not a man, I am a dynamite. He's also the one who said that you have to do philosophy with a hammer. He writes mostly in aphorisms, short, sharp bursts of thought, which makes him easy to digest, but also dangerous. While reading him, you feel sometimes his rage. You find yourself nodding and saying, yes, I'm also mad at all those fake respectable people. But be careful. Because of his style, it's easy to take him out of context and think he's just a crazy guy yelling at clouds. But his critique is systematic. He's dismantling Western culture brick by brick. The Gay Science is the book where Nietzsche famously announces the death of God. But he doesn't say it in a way a theologian would, with solemn sadness. He says it like someone revealing a cosmic crime scene. And the reason is that for Nietzsche, the death of God isn't just the end of religion, it's the collapse of the entire moral universe we've been living in for 2000 years. And here I find something personally very impressive. Nietzsche describes this event as a point of no return. It is indeed no coincidence that the aphorism 124, the one right before the death of God, is called the horizon of the infinite. Here, Nietzsche gives us a terrifying image. He compares us to a ship that has left the land. We have burned the bridge behind us. We have ventured into the open ocean. At some point, you get scared. You want to look back. But here's the point. You cannot go back because the land is gone. And that is exactly our situation. So, how do we react to this? What do we do after losing meaning, truth, and purpose? Do we give up? Nietzsche's response is not despair, it is laughter, joy, creation, affirmation. The gay or joyful science is Nietzsche's attempt to teach us how to dance on the rubble of old certainties. It's a philosophy of courage in a world without guarantees. He gives us the idea of the amor fati, the love of fate, not just accepting your life, but loving, not wishing your past were different, but embracing every scar, every mistake, every moment as the raw material for who you are becoming. He challenges us with the eternal recurrence. If you had to live your life again, exactly the same, infinite times, every pain, every joy, every boredom, would you curse it or would you celebrate it? It's not a physics theory, it's a test, a mirror that asks, are you living in a way you could affirm yourself? Above all, Nietzsche gives us the figure of the free spirit, someone who can stare into the abyss without flinching, someone who creates values instead of inheriting them, someone who transforms suffering into strength, chaos into creativity, and fear into freedom. But be careful, don't be fooled by the fireworks. Nietzsche is not telling you to reject everything just to be a rebel. He's telling you to become responsible for everything, especially the meaning of your own existence. So let's look at the map we've drawn today. Augustine turns you inward. He shows us that philosophy begins with the courage to examine your own mind, your own longing, and your own contradictions. Fichte turns you outward. He reminds us that thinking is never just private. It is a responsibility to others and a way of participating in the history of the world. And Nietzsche pushes you beyond. He challenges us to stand without inherited certainties and to create meaning with honesty and courage. And that's the real lesson. Philosophy isn't just reading books. Philosophy begins when these three movements collide: self-knowledge, responsibility, and the freedom to create. Philosophy is a way of living awake in a world that rarely asks you to. Thank you for watching this video. I'm Ivan and this is Empyrean, the Academy of Philosophy and Fine Arts.